As I've done in the past, I wanted to give you an overview of what psychoanalytic criticism is, especially since this particular literary theory is very complex, it's very theoretical, because of course it deals with the conscious and the subconscious and how everything works together within a written text to create meaning. So again, it can be a little mind-boggling. And if you find that you're having trouble with it, really stick to the general ideas of what psychoanalytic criticism is, because I have found personally when I really dive into the depths of certain theories, the deeper I go, the more confused I get, and the harder it is to answer my questions. So this material can be very deep, very, very complex, but if you stay in the generalities and have just a basic overview of what this theory is, that's all you really need. If you want to go deeper and you would like other resources, by all means let me know and I can provide you with some. If you would like to read the works of Freud or Jung or Lacan, by all means I highly encourage you to do that. But otherwise, if you find that this is just really oppressive on you, just stay in general terms with it. So I wanted to give you some supplemental information that is not covered in the resources that you're given online for this theory. But before I do that, I want to discuss those just a tiny bit. So when you read the overview of the criticism as well as the essential sheet, one thing that I would recommend you doing is go to the essential sheet first. Go to the end. It's not the back page, the last page, but it's the last few pages, and you'll see a list of key terms. Each of the theories has done this, but with this theory in particularly, I highly suggest that you go to those terms, get a really good general idea of what they are, and then read about the criticism itself, because this theory has a very a very specific set of terms functioning within it. So if you have a good grasp of those terms, you might understand the theory more. So instead of reading the general overview, the longer resource that you're given online, read the essentials first, read the questions, get a general idea of what a theorist might ask about a text within this theory, but then go to those key terms and look through all of them and make sure you have a good general idea, and then go back and look through the theory overview page that you're provided. I think both are very clear and very helpful in terms of understanding some basics, but I want to go even further. So at this point, you can ask yourself, what is psychoanalytic criticism? Well, of course, very simply, it's identifying the psychological ideas and elements within literature. Now, there's a whole lot that you can do within the psychology, so that's where it starts getting crazy. So don't let it drive you crazy. Just stay in the general. Don't go too deep if you're not comfortable with it. So when you are identifying these ideas and elements, you can focus on the reader, which is you, the characters in the story, or the author of the story. And really, psychoanalytic criticism questions the behavior and the motivations behind the behavior. So if a character is doing something, you can ask why. Why are they doing that? What is driving them to do that unconsciously? Or you can look to the author. Why is the author writing this way? Why are they using these words? Why did they insert this into the story? And what does it reflect about the author's mentality or conscious, unconscious? And then for you as the reader, what does the story itself do to affect your conscious or subconscious? So, you can kind of go all over the place with this theory. Also, with formalism, that is a theory that's pretty much constructed for the use of literary analysis. Feminist theory is a bit broader, but of course draws back to literature. And psychoanalytic criticism is similar. The theorists don't necessarily say, oh, this is what you need to do with writing. With Freud, he was a psychologist. He studied people. He did case studies and he tried to find cures and made theories based on his observations. He didn't necessarily say, oh, this is what I think you should do and apply it to literature. Some psychoanalytic folks do, but some do not. So in most cases, the theories within and the ideas within this criticism are applied to curing mental disorders. We can just apply it to writing, because some view writing as a psychological process, but we'll get to that. Also, this particular criticism has quite a bit of connection to some other theories. It's very much related to feminism, because Freud was, he was a bit, man-focused. We'll try to put it in nice terms. He was very much concerned about men, and women were much more, much more low-key and just totally different. So he's kind of a pig. I don't want to say that in a bad way, but just kind of sexist in some of his work and theories. With deconstruction, you are breaking things apart and looking for the meaning behind it, which is a different literary theory. And also because you can look at the author's psychology, it's semi-biographical. So a lot of connections in this theory. So what exactly does it do? Psychoanalytic criticism identifies the relationship between the conscious and the subconscious. Sounds simple, extremely complex, because there's so many different things you can look at. You can look at fears, fantasies, memories, desires, dreams, actions, accidents, archetypes. Oh my gosh, there's so much that you can do. But very basically, it's the relationship between the conscious, the subconscious, and what meaning comes from that. It also identifies symbols and images and how they provide meaning to the text, because those symbols and images are a reflection of the subconscious that we then make conscious. Woo! Your brains hurt yet? They might by the end of working with this theory. So here's some big names in psychoanalytic criticism. First, we have Sigmund Freud. He's kind of the man when it comes to this particular theory. He's not the only psychoanalytic theorist, but he's a very, very big one, and he really did most of the work when it comes to looking at the conscious versus the subconscious. So he talks about how there is overt content versus covert content. One is hidden, one is obvious, and how they interact to find what a story or a text is really about. So the underlying meaning. Let's see here. In this book by Peter Berry, it's the beginning theory, which I recommended as a resource for this course. Berry says the unconscious, like the poem or novel or play, cannot speak directly and explicitly, but does so through images, symbols, emblems, and metaphors. Literature, too, is not involved with making direct, explicit statements about life, but with showing and expressing experience through imagery, symbolism, metaphor, and so on. So there's your connection between the conscious and the subconscious in life and in poetry or prose. Literature in general, there's a very distinct connection. So that's why we're able to apply psychoanalytic theory to writing. They're both a psychological process. Other things that Sigmund Freud, I won't call him Sigmund, was really famous for bringing forth is the Oedipus complex, which is when you have a son who kind of competes with the father for the attention of the mother. He did a ton of work with dream analysis. So he identified what the dream content was, which is what the dream was about, and the dream thought, which is what the dream actually means. So anytime you have a dream, you can sit down and be like, okay, what would Freud say about this crazy dream I just had? And he viewed dreams as an escape for repressed thoughts and feelings. So again, it's our subconscious coming through to our conscious, but in this case, it's through the medium of dreams. He also worked with archetypes. Archetypes are universal symbols or images that we can see, such as water. Water can be a symbol of purification, of baptism, things like that. So if you see water in one text and water in another text and then another and another, they tend to mean the same thing and have the same influence on the story. So that is an archetype. The next theorist I wanted to bring up is Carl Jung. So you pronounce his last name Jung, like the young boy. So Carl Jung also worked with archetypes. He also worked with artistic creation and how that relates to the conscious and subconscious. He also worked with images and symbols, but he worked with the image behind the image. So the Norton Anthology of Theory and Criticism says, Jung functions as a master teacher whose learning and poetic insight equip his readers to recognize the foundational stories behind stories and grasp the core images whose content and form underlie the myths, tales, and legends of the world's diverse literary traditions. So put simply, he's identifying why it is we like certain things. How if we watch a fairy tale, what is it about that fairy tale that we enjoy so much? It's the foundation of what a fairy tale means and what it entails and what it means to us. So he's finding images within images, meaning within meaning. He also made a direct connection between art and psychology. So he was one that made a connection between how we think and how we express that through art. So he himself said the practice of art is a psychological activity and as such can be approached from a psychological angle. So that came from Jung's on the relation of analytical psychology to poetry. The last major thing, not like these are in chronological order, but another major thing that he worked with was the animus and the anima. So the animus is the male characteristics or attributes a person contains, and the anima are the female characteristics or attributes. So I obviously am a woman, but I still contain animus and anima traits. So he looks at how they consciously and subconsciously manifest themselves and how they work together. Perhaps there's a woman who has more animus than anima. What does that say about her psychology? What about a man? Does his anima, the female side of him, overtake the animus, the male side of him? So Jung is attributed to having a lot of ideas on this, and most of the writing that was actually done on the animus and the anima was done by his wife after he died. So kind of interesting. She knew him that well and knew his theory that well that she was then able to articulate what his ideas were after he had died. All right, so the last theorist that I wanted to cover was Jacques Lacan. He really focused on words, that words are an expression of psychological meaning. So words and meanings have a life of their own and constantly override and obscure the supposed simplicities and clarity of external reality. So you can think of words as a symbol for what's going on in the subconscious. And of course, that was from Barry's book. Barry's book's amazing. If you really are interested in learning more about literary theory, it's an excellent resource. It's relatively simply worded and very easily explained. You just sometimes have to work through the material, but it really is a good resource. He also looked at how the subconscious is manifested as language. So whenever the unconscious is being discussed, the amount of linguistic analysis increases. I'm going to have to change the spelling on that, sorry. So the linguistic analysis increases since puns, allusions, and other kind of wordplay are often the mechanisms which make manifest the content of the unconscious. So what we say and how we say it are directly related to what it is that we're thinking. He also believed that the unconscious is the kernel of our being, which is very much the opposite of what Freud thought. Freud was all about the conscious and then the subconscious kind of coming through the conscious, whereas Lacan believed that the unconscious was where our true selves could be found. So I really don't have time, since I mentioned that, I don't have time to show how these three really related because Lacan kind of went off of Freud, on this idea because Freud believed that the conscious was the kernel of our being. This is the wording from Lacan himself. And Jung and Freud were actually colleagues until 1914. They came to a disagreement. They disagreed on what they thought and were theorizing. No longer friends, but these three are actually quite related. So I hope this helps. I hope this doesn't make your brain fry a little bit too much anyway. It's a fun theory, so enjoy working with it, and just let me know if you have any questions.